Hi guys, Arthur here from Homeowner DIY. In this video, I'm going to do an oil change on a 2001 Buick Regal. Now, an oil change is the most basic form of car maintenance that you can do. I started doing my own oil changes when I was a teenager. For the investment that you need, some ramps, a pan, oil filter wrench, and some box end wrenches. I think in a very short period of time, you will make your investment back. One other thing is when you do your own oil change, at least you know it's been done correctly, because a quick lube place, you never really know what they're going to do. So with that in mind, what we'll do now is material and tools. Alright, this is our materials list. So I have two types of oil filters. These are both Fram. This one's smaller, this one's bigger. Either will work. We'll talk about the oil filters in just a second. I have 10W30, so this is the manufacturer recommendation for this car. And then we have latex gloves. The oil will be hot and this will more than likely be a dirty job. Alright, so these are two Fram oil filters. Both of these oil filters will work. One is bigger than the other. I couldn't figure out why I wrote down both in my book, but if you look at the O-ring here and here are the same. So the same size. And then the nipple here and here are also the same. So even though one oil filter is bigger than the other one, both will work on this car. Alright, this is our tools list. So I have ramps, a funnel, and a pan for the old oil. Guys, one thing. I have a second pan just like this for every other fluid, but because oil is really dirty, you can't mix them. So if you're going to do ongoing maintenance in your car, make sure that you have a second clean pan. 15mm box end wrench, so box end, open end, oil filter wrench, a magnet, and then a funnel for our clean oil. And then this is optional, but if you want, a piece of cardboard, because things may get messy. Alright, so this is our engine. It's a 3800 Series 2 V6. Now, this is a very common engine. This is a GM vehicle, but there's other GM vehicles that will use this same engine. So it is good to be educated on where things are. So our engine oil, 10W30, and then this is our oil dipstick. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove the plastic cover. That's all this is. Exposing our engine. I'm going to put the cap back on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go take the car for a quick drive. When you do this, the oil needs to be at operating temperature. Don't do this when it's cold because the oil is not going to flow properly. Alright, so the ramps are set up. So the ramps are straight. The tires are also straight. So for this car, because it's high enough, I don't need to do anything to get the car up onto the ramps. I don't need to raise it at all. So all I'm going to do is drive the car up on to the ramps here. And make sure you also leave space in front so the car has a place to go. Alright, so I hit the transmission in reverse. I went back to the very bottom. So I'm not going to chock the wheels in the back here. If you use the e-brake, that's more than enough. If you want to chock the wheels, you can. But the car is not going to go anywhere. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get underneath the car and we will locate our sump plug and our oil filter. Alright, so this is the underside of the car. This is our oil sump right here. So you notice here and over here there's oil caked on everything. So something here is leaking. Another indication is that spot right there. So whenever you're going to do an oil change or anything else, I mean, if you're already here, you should inspect other things. I don't know what is leaking oil, but we're not going to worry about that right now. So what I'm going to do is, the sump plug is right there, and I'll show you where the oil filter is on this car. Alright, so our front passenger side tire is here. The oil filter is right there. It's caked in grease. I only change this thing out once a year, but that is where the oil filter is. So I've put the cardboard down. First thing we'll do is we'll take off the oil filter. Alright, so I'm going to try to undo the filter by hand. Alright, so this is our filter. This is a P816, so this is the bigger one. But up here is where you can see the nipple. So take a rag or a piece of paper towel and make sure that you wipe where the new oil filter O-ring is going to go. It's going to drip out for a bit, but that's perfectly fine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to prep the new oil filter for install. Alright, so I'm going to use the smaller of the two filters to show you that the 3387A works as well. So we're going to prime the filter first. We're going to fill it with oil. So we have our funnel, we have our jug of oil, and just slowly fill it up until it reaches the top. Alright, so now it's at the top. We'll take a little bit of oil and then go around the O-ring so it'll slide nice and smoothly. Now our filter is ready for reinstall. Alright, so we have our sump underneath. This is our oil sump plug. This here, this big black piece, this is our oil sump, and then this is our tranny fluid. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a 15mm wrench and then loosen it off. And I'll give it 5 or 10 minutes until you have a few drips or nothing at all. But this is our oil sump plug. Sometimes it will have a fiber washer underneath. This one doesn't. But if it starts leaking, then see if you can get a fiber washer first. Alright, so the flow of oil has pretty much stopped. Now, I said earlier about having a magnet, so this is our sump plug. If you drop the sump plug inside, the oil is going to be too hot to try to get, so just use a magnet and then you can pick it up and out. But now with this drained out, we're going to put the sump plug back in. So once again, this will be righty tighty, lefty loosey. Now, one thing to keep in mind, and I just came across this sump here, this is aluminum. It's a relatively soft metal, so go hand tight, put your wrench on it. So that is when it's stiff, it stops. Give an extra quarter turn. That is it. If this is still leaking, then go get a fiber washer. But don't start to keep turning this because you will strip the sump plug. And I just ran into this with somebody else because the threads on the sump were stripped. But that is fine. So what I'm going to do now is put back the oil filter. Alright, so I have the filter and I'm just going to screw it back onto the threaded nipple. Alright, so the smaller filter is on and we're just going to go hand tight so that it stops right there.
Give it a few more turns by hand and you should be fine. And then you can see how here it's all flush. So a bigger filter doesn't it doesn't change anything. A smaller filter like this one will work as well. So what I'll do now is fill up the engine block.
Alright, so the engine capacity is like 4.5 liters. Is basically the amount of the bottle. So normally I would pre-measure this, but for some of you that don't do this often enough, this is what I would do. I've already used oil from this jug to fill up the oil filter, so I'd go like 3/4 of the way down, and then that is when I check the oil level after you take the ramps off. Alright, so I put in amount of oil that I'm not quite sure, but all you need to do is now check your dipstick. Now keep in mind, so wipe it the first time, pull it back out. So I am still at the very bottom here where it says add 1 quart, so the minimum is this first hole here, so I'm still below, but you can always just add more as you need to. Alright, so I'm at the very first dot down here, so I can add in more, which I'm gonna add in like roughly a 1/2 liter, and then I'm gonna put the car back down. But this is where you'll go rough. Once the car is back down from the ramps, that is when you're gonna add oil until you're at the maximum. Alright, so I'm at the second hole here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to run the car, check for leaks. If nothing is leaking, then I'm going to roll the car off the ramps. Now, I would suggest give it a good minute and pay attention for the oil sump plug and the oil filter to see if anything's leaking. Alright, so I'm going to start the car. I'm going to leave the oil pan down here in case something is leaking that I can position it quickly. But I'm going to now run the car for about a minute and make sure that there's nothing leaking from the oil sump plug here and then from the oil filter over here. Alright, it looks like nothing is leaking from the sump or from the oil filter. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to drive the car down off the ramp, and once the car is on a flat surface, that's when I'm going to add oil to the maximum level. This, when the car is on ramps, this is not the time to do that because the car is not level. Alright, so to be environmentally responsible, I have a jug. I paint my my old fluid jugs orange, but I'm now going to pour the old oil into my jug, and then I'm going to take it for recycling. Alright, the car is now on a level surface, so we're going to check the oil level. Always wipe it first. And it says 1 dot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add oil. So we're at the 4th dot right there. So we're 80% of the way. This is fine. If you want to go all the way to the max, you can. Depending on your mileage as well. The higher mileage, the more your car is going to burn oil. So if you want to go a little bit more than that, that can work out for you too. But the oil change is now done. So what I'm going to do is We'll put the cover back on, and that should be it for this job. Alright, so we'll put the plastic cover back on. The cap here has to be off before you do this, and then just put that back in. Otherwise, our oil level is now up to maximum. We'll check it one last time. So it is up to the 5th dot right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to really quickly reset the oil life light. If you guys use it. I don't personally, but it's a good thing to know. Alright, so the oil change soon light, we need to reset this. So shut the car off. Turn it to the on position, but don't start. And then pump your gas pedal. 1, 2, 3. And then hold it down. It's flashing. And now the oil light has gone out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut the car off. I'm going to restart it. And then we're going to check our oil light. Actually, we don't even have to. It says here 100%. It's really faint. But guys, that is it for this oil change. So what we'll do now is an overview of this job. Alright guys, so that concludes this project. So an oil change is very basic, it's very simple. If you want to get into DIY, working on your own car, this is definitely the place to start. And you will save money very quickly, especially you can do oil changes for other people as well. So I highly recommend doing this on your own. The time on this job, the time was about a half an hour. That's what it will take me typically to do an oil change, to set up the ramps and then do everything. There's not much to it. It's relatively straightforward. I've never ran into any type of major issue. Like I said, with the sump oil plug, be very careful about when you tighten it back up. Go hand tighten, give it an extra quarter turn. These sumps are only aluminum, so it's very easy to strip. If it keeps leaking, try some Teflon tape, or try to go to a quick lube place and get a fiber washer. The cost of this job, the oil and the filter were about $55, so it's not expensive to do on your own. And also keep some extra oil on hand. Depending on the mileage of your car, you may have to start adding oil because of burning, or like in the case of the Buick here, there's a leak somewhere. I believe it's the oil pan gasket. The car is old enough and so it was caked at the bottom. I've done a few oil pan gaskets in my time. Depending on how much you're leaking, it may be worth doing it. It might not be, but that's something you're gonna have to figure out for yourself. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. I hope something here is going to help you to be more confident in doing oil changes yourself. Guys, till next time, please hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next project.